Welcome to This Week in the PNFL. I'm your host, Mark Hill, and along for the ride, as it's been all season, is Mitch and Dean. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Fantastic.
And we have two special guests with us as we are coming down to the AFC and the NFC championship games. From the AFC side, we have Steve Corbett from the Los Angeles Chargers. And from the NFC side, the Washington Redskins, we have Jerry Seymour. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we had a real good, actually had some good games this past week, and we're going to jump into that real quick. And then from there, we're going to have a little chat with the coaches, state of the league, and then we're going to come out to the final week's games. To make this a little bit different, and I think it'd be a little interesting, we're going to have the NFC coaches comment on the AFC games and the AFC coaches comment on the NFC game. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and jump into the games real quick. The first game that we have on the list is New England going in to play Oakland, and Oakland said not this time, and Oakland walked away with a 35-23 win. We're going to start this one off with Jerry to comment on that one. So what did you see in this game, and your opinions on this one, Jerry?
Well, I think it was kind of interesting. New England had kind of found an identity on the last half of the season, but when we went into this game, they definitely deviated. I think first half, they definitely surprised Oakland. They were throwing the ball all over the field and those kind of things. And I think Oakland really had to adjust to be able to survive there. It was definitely some hard road to hoe for them.
Yes, it was. Dean, what do you have to see on that game?
Do you mean Steve or Dean, Mark?
I said Dean, because Dean is NFC side.
That is correct. My apologies. Go right in. It's your show. What am I doing? I'm here.
It's your show too. Go ahead. I think he's still recovering from that game, being shell shocked. So
it's been a while since I've been in the NFC.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dean.
The Patriots are definitely the underdog team in this game, and they tried some kind of unorthodox ideas on offense and didn't have a whole lot of success with some of the things that they tried on offense, especially the use of some of those pass razzle-dazzle passes on first down. And I think they completed a couple of those. But, those are usually pretty low percentage for long yardage when they work. And I think overall, Oakland had a pretty solid, balanced offense that allowed them to score a good number of points. And, Oakland was just a stronger team. I mean, I think New England was going to have to come up with something very good to win this game. And I think they kind of went in the direction of, well, we'll try some stuff and hope to catch Oakland off guard and win the game that way, but it fell short.
Yeah, I agree on that one. But I would say it was a good season for them. They started off on pretty much behind the eight ball starting the season, but they did finish up strong. So congratulations on New England this season. Next game, we have Atlanta taking on Chicago, and I was wrong on this one. I did predict Oakland to take the first one. This one I was wrong, but Atlanta went to Chicago and upset the Cardinals by the score of 32-22. And we're going to have Steve start on this comment, or on this one. So Steve, can you go ahead and start us off on this one?
Sure. But from what I saw, Atlanta just lit him up. Basically, he threw the ball as much as he could in this game. Most of the season, we've been seeing kind of like more of a switch between running and passing, but he went pretty much heavy with the pass in this game, and it definitely got there. I saw when I was watching the plays that were being chosen, just like a lot of the new Atlanta Falcons plays being picked. So kudos to you there, Dean, making some great plays for this season that you used, and you kind of used those to beat Chicago. I would say that one other thing I noticed is that the Chicago offense just seemed to be somewhat out of sync with the Rudolph as the quarterback. May have been different with Arnold. So basically, I think what happened here is that you caught Chicago at a good time. I think that if you had the other quarterback, it might have been a little bit closer game for sure. But what I'm also noticing is that the defense effort here was pretty well done by Atlanta. I just think Chicago came in there thinking they could actually beat Dean like they usually do, like they did in the XFBS. So it didn't work out this time for them.
Definitely was surprised. Mitch.
All right. Well, the big thing for me for this game, and if you'll remember from last week, I told Dean, I was like, look, man, you're going to have to get that pass protection much more tight. Because, Green Bay, I think, had 8 sacks on Atlanta that final game. It didn't turn out so well. And Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, led the league in sacks this year. And the big thing this game, Chicago 1 sack. And so, Steve, you're right.
Yep.
Atlanta was able to get protection. And the passing game was great. It wasn't just, dink and dunk. We averaged 9.9 yards an attempt on those passes. And so, Dean, nice job in the laboratory this week, tightening up that pass protection and getting the ball down the field, and it paid off in a nice win for you.
Okay,
Thanks.
There you go. All right, next game we have the LA Chargers. I was wrong on this one. I was 2 for 4, I guess. LA taking on New York, and another upset, I guess, in some circles. LA took this game 24-16. We are going to start with you on this one, Dean.
Yeah, this was my lead pipe lock of the week last week. As you may remember, I said this was going to be the one upset that was going to happen. Chargers are going to beat the Jets. And, in the game that, the Jets were certainly competitive, and it seemed like every time the Chargers scored and went ahead, or got a bit ahead, that, the Jets would score something to keep it close. But in the end, the Chargers offense got the job done and scored enough points to win, and their defense contained. When you hold the Jets to 16 games, they're one of the most prolific offenses in the league. You hold them to 16 points. That's a very solid defensive performance, and the offense scored enough points to come up with the 24-16 win. And it's interesting that last year we had a Super Bowl between the Cardinals and the Jets, and this year neither of those teams is going to the Super Bowl. So regardless of who wins the games this weekend, we're going to have a Super Bowl between 2 different teams than we had last season.
And that's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting going forward to see where it's going to be. It's kind of fresh to see the new teams coming in, teams that are finally gotten over that hump. Jerry, what was your take on this?
Yeah, I think I'm similar to Dean here. I think the defense was definitely the issue, but I think the key with the defensive strategy was the Chargers. These teams moving around are like crazy, always mess up these names, right? So the Chargers, they definitely, they played well defense. But I think the biggest key is they really controlled the ball. They ran the ball a lot, even though, all the plays weren't super successful. They ran it. They kept control of it, kept the Jets off the field, which is one of the keys when you play the Jets. The Jets are, hit a few more big plays. They pass the ball a little bit more down the field and push and try to hit some bigger things. So controlling the clock like the Chargers did really made a big difference, allowed them to keep the score closer. And again, Dean was exactly correct. You hold the Jets to 16 points and you've had a pretty good day. So I really think the more balanced offense and controlling the ball was really the key.
I would agree with you on that one. As I said, I predicted the Jets were going to win, and I have to agree with you, Jerry. The best way to beat that team is to keep that offense on the sideline. The longer you keep them out there, the better off you're going to be. Heading out to the final game of this week, New Orleans taking on Washington, and I did predict this one correctly as we were going into the final game. It was, and this one here, I was expecting some points, but I was not expecting, because I definitely did not expect a shutout. So Washington took this game 27-0. We're going to start with Mitch on this one.
Yeah, to me, this was about how Washington was able to stack the box, stop the run early, and then just get after the quarterback on those third down, second and long plays. I think, 2.2 yards, a run, 7 sacks for Washington. And, putting the ball in Thorson's hands with that pass rush, it just wasn't going to happen. New Orleans could not move the ball, and Washington, played their solid offense and great defense, and they're in the championship game. So nice job.
Okay, Steve, let's let you go ahead and bring this segment home. What did you see in this game?
Well, just like you said, 7 sacks. That was a big factor right there. I mean, that's a lot of sacks for a playoff game. What I also noticed is that the Saints were held to 2.2 yards average rushing. I mean, that's if you're not going to get the ball in the air, you need to get it on the ground. And in this case, that was just not happening. I would say simply what we saw in this game is Washington dominated them. I mean, they dominated them every phase of the game. They couldn't get across the center of the field. It was just kind of it's almost like Jerry knew what they were going to do.
Yeah, Jerry. So did you do one of those New England things and have the camera sitting out there while you was scouting their practices? I mean, I didn't see the game live because I was watching the other games in the NFL, and I watched this being streamed later on, and I'm just like, man, it was just dominant from start to finish. I mean, I was like, man, this, woof, tough game. So, but I want to say, as we wrap this segment up, I want to say congratulations on a great season for New England, Chicago, the Jets, and New Orleans. Great season for you guys. Even though you fell short, someone has to win, someone has to lose. But, hey, you guys made it to the playoffs and I didn't. So good, great season on you guys, for all you guys.
Hey, what 7 of the 8 teams had 10+ wins? I mean, that might be the first time we've had that in a while in the playoffs. So definitely was a good group of teams.
Yep, definitely a good group of teams. So as we pivot out of the first one and we're moving into the second segment, we have with our 2 guests that we have on this week. I just want to start this off by getting a little bit of background on the guys and try to make it more, learn a little bit more about the coaches in the league. We already know about Dean. We already know about Mitch, or as I call him, Coach Holtz, as he tries to downplay everything. But trying to get a little insight on Jerry and Steve. So if we can go into that a little bit, Jerry, what's your history with FB Pro in general and in the league? What drew you to the game, and what is it that keeps you motivated in staying in the league?
Well, I first saw the software, just happened to randomly see it on the doggone shelf in a store, and I picked it up. That was Football Pro 95 at the time. And within about a year of playing around with it at home, the internet starting to explode in that time and those kind of things, I picked it up and started playing in the league. I joined the virtual football league. We actually have a new coach now out in Denver who was a member of that league back at that time, which is almost 30 years ago now, right? As we were pushing it. As that league kind of faded away, I ended up going to the CBFL, Canadian Bacon Football League. That's where and that's where I ran into our Chicago coach. I was a rival there with Justin. We had a lot of battles back and forth and some championships and things in that league. And then again, as the league kind of faded away and people were moving to 98, I went on and finally bought 98 and started messing with it. Was looking around for leagues, and I found noticed the PFNL, read up on it, and was really intrigued, with the attributes and the way things are different and that kind of thing, because I thought that was interesting, and way better than, because I will tell you, I got a story back in the old VFL days. There was the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had a defensive lineman that was 99 speed AC. He won almost every game because it was impossible to get a playoff, right? The player was just too dominant. So the VPNFL, I think, really brings coaching in, brings all aspects of the league in. So I was really happy to get in the league. And, and just like anybody else, I've been in it so long. I've had some spells where I was a little more, didn't prepare as much, everything wasn't excited. They got a little old, but I kind of got that back. Dean and I kind of did something a few years ago. And I swapped teams completely and started back with the team and rebuilt here to what's Washington now. And I've been going strong since I made that switch and kind of got back into things.
Okay. Yeah, because you started out with 95. I started out with 95 as well. I think I was, I was in the military in Kentucky, I think at Fort Campbell, when I got involved in it, and just kept moving up with the games every year. And kind of bummed out when 99 came out, and that was just a disaster. And then all of a sudden, Madden came in, and that's sweeping everybody out. But I kind of like this one here from the strategy side of it, and not just the gaming, the basically computer or the video game mode aspect of it. So, pivoting over to Steve, what is your story? How did you get involved into the game, and where you started out from, and where you at right now?
I started with February Pro 96. Don't exactly remember when I found it, but I do just know that I found it in one of those gaming stores, and it was just on the shelf, and it was next to Madden. I think Madden by then was still there. It was actually just starting. And I was just like, I don't want an arcade. I want something more strategic. So I went with this one. Never looked back. So basically, I went and played FA Pro 96. The first league I joined was the CCFL. The commission eventually quit. Huge story. He thought I was stealing his plays when I was like watching in the film what his plays did and made the plays myself. And so he quit the league, and then I took over the league and ran the league. So I don't think he'd survive very well in our world right now, where we have a pool of plays. But back then people were that crazy about things like that. But yeah, as a CCFL, I took that league. And then after that, I created another league. And eventually both those leagues I had created folded. And then I moved on to the Federation leagues, which that's pretty much where I met Mitch and Dean, I think. So Federation leagues were like the NWFL, the ICFL, the CFA, and the CSFL. So they were all being run by Daryl Young. So as far as like the whole federation, but all different commissions ran those leagues, and we were all using like the same play design rules and everything. So it's kind of like the old school plays back then, where people would submit their PPPs, and then they would send it to each other. So it was kind of weird. Not as simple as it is now, where we have a commissioner running the whole show. After that, I went and joined the XFL, and then when that league finally ended, it was actually, the XFL actually was interesting. The league kind of ended almost when EA left and retired as commissioner, and then myself and another coach took it over and started running it. And then we started having the max exodus of people. I don't know, maybe it was Madden was starting to get popular. And then we both killed that league, and then I joined the PNFL at that point. I was like, well, I need a league, and I've been with the PNFL since.
Okay. You know what? I remember being in the XFL, if it's the one that I'm thinking about, because I had started off in the AAFL. That was when I met Steven, New England's coach, and we kind of connected there, and then I left that league. Life happens, and then I ended up moving into the XFL. I was in there for a while, and I left that league, and there was a long pause, and then Steven happened to reach out to me again, and he mentioned the PNFL, so I kind of got into that, and I was first couple of seasons was kind of like, oh, let me fill this out, and then I realized, whoa, this isn't like those other leagues. This is completely different, so had to kind of step up a little bit on that. So, but thanks a lot, guys. I mean, we'll bring in Mitch and Dean because you guys already know about them. But anything you guys want to add in that we don't know from the first time we had our interviews, gentlemen?
Well, it's interesting to listen to what Jerry and Steve said about the leagues back then, and I definitely share many of those experiences. I was in many of those leagues, and like the defensive end with 99 ratings. I remember there were a lot of fast defensive ends. We were in a college league back then that I had helped start, and we had a system where we had like sort of you could draft a player and then like boost his points, not like the boost that we do, but and I remember one season I had a defensive end that was somewhat like that, not quite as. I think it was 90 speed and 95 acceleration via boosting him and still had pretty high strength. And, it was really insane. I mean, that player would by himself get 15 sacks per game. And it's like, you had to run plays where you had like at least two running backs or a running back and a tight end in the backfield for pass protection to keep from your quarterback just getting immediately slammed before you even had a chance to look for a receiver. So it's crazy. The way our ratings here in the PNFL have balanced definitely leads to much more strategy and coaching and not just dominating a game because you have some, freak of nature kind of player at defensive end or something. So I think we've really come a long way since those days overall.
I would say, Steve, about the old Federation leagues. Yeah, I remember when we would simulate, you'd send your PPP to your opponent, and then if they were the home team, and then they would have to email the commissioner and the visiting team when they started the sim. And basically, if the sim went more than an hour before you emailed them back, they thought you cheated.
Yeah, exactly. That was just crazy.
That's what we had a term, we called it home cooking, because we had, playing the home games, and there was one league I was in, and I don't even I probably this particular coach probably isn't coaching leagues in ages, but there was one league where this coach coached Denver in this league I was in, and it didn't matter how good or bad his team was in any given season, he was always 8-0 at home. There's one season he went 4-1 the division because he was 8-0 at home and he's 4-4 on the road. And of course, everyone suspected this guy was doing a little, doing, as I said, a little home cooking in his games at home. He always won at home. He never lost a home game. That's kind of,
Well, we have the opposite of that in the PNFL. We've got a couple of teams, I think, combined 1-15 at home this year.
Wow.
So it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I think I would be frustrated if I was doing that. In that you find out, hey, every time I play this guy and he's at home and he's winning the games all the time, but on the road it's kind of a split. I think in the AAFL we had to send him in on the AAFL. The XFL I think was the same way. But for me, I don't know. I just what I like about this one, if I can pivot out of that for a second, but what I like about this one is one, You're sending it out to the commission. They can run the games. And I remember early on, I think you guys mentioned it earlier during our show this season, is that before you had the YouTube games, you had to get the league files that came back in, or the game files, and you had to kind of run that, then kind of read through it to see what was on there or how you did. And then they had the I think what was it, the net scoreboard, where you'd load the files in, and then it would have you like this little graphic animation where it would show the players running, or if there's a pass, it showed the football being ran, football being thrown. So that kind of added a different dimension to it. But this here is just, I wish you would have had this early on in the leagues. I think that would be much better. Would you agree or disagree?
Oh, I think it's a game changer to have the YouTube version of the games. Yeah.
To me, that's the best part. It's like I'm a chef during the week, kind of putting everything in the pot, and then I get to watch it bake, on Saturday night or Sunday, whenever the game, comes out. I mean, that's the fun part. If I not be able to see that, drove me nuts.
Yeah.
No more reading logs.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys this, and then I want to talk about the state of the league. But this is for all four of you. So, if there would have been a way, say that Dynamics, who created the game originally, if they would have kept this thing going, would you have preferred it? Again, say if they kept the game going, would you have preferred to doing the PPPs and send them into the commish, or would you have preferred something if they would have gotten that server? Because I think in 99, they were trying to get that server set, 98, 99, where you can actually go into a server and you could play your league games out that way, where you could just kind of coach it. Do you prefer doing the Sims where you send everything in, or mano-y-mano, say I play against Mitch, and then you're able to take a look and send the plays in, play it back and forth that way in real time?
I would say to that, at minimum, like, make it optional. I know there's some people that really don't want to play head-to-head and some people that really do want to. So maybe if we ran the league like we're doing now, but if that capability existed, make it optional that in any given game, if the two coaches involved both agreed that they wanted to play a head-to-head game, then they could play it that way, and then submit the – because you could use that old system where you create the in files and out files to merge games. So
yep.
You could game from the in file and then submit that file to Rich and or Charlie once it's played, if the two coaches involved agreed to a head-to-head game that way. So, and that might be at least the way to try it. So those who want to do that, if both teams that play this week, like Mark, if you and Mitch were playing one of your regular season games next season, you both agreed to do it that way, then you two could coach head-to-head and play the game that way, using the same PPPs that you would normally submit. Excuse me, that you would normally submit to Charlie and Rich anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and I know Sierra, they took their whole server and all the other crap down, but I always thought, because as I watched the games, like the games I lost in overtime this season, would have been like, oh man, why did I pick that play? And it's like, I would have done something completely different, because you can have it mapped out, kind of like in the real NFL, they have those so many plays scripted. But then it kind of gets to that point where you're just kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this, because the game is just so fluid. And I think some coaches would have liked just keep doing the way it is now. Or, I mean, if the game would have kept going, that would have been a nice way to add it. But again, as you said, it takes the time, because you're talking maybe about an hour or 40, however long it takes to run the game. So I'm kind of mixed on both of them, but I think I'd lean more towards of actually playing head to head and being able to pick the plays, because what I think is going to happen in my prep may not be what happens in the game. So.
For me, I mean, well, it's really kind of hard to answer the question, since we don't know at this point, how 20 years later, how far down the road, some of the technology and some of the changes would have been. But based on the game we've got now, the way it's going, if we could have the PNFL rules and the play types in, and having to choose play types from the right categories on the certain downs, I think it would be kind of cool to play head to head. The only concern is is that in the head-to-head games, if there are not some very strict rules around realism, you can have coach. Right now, like those slot plays, right? Those little, 6-yard little slot plays that are completed 80% of the time. You probably just have somebody call that over and over and over and
Dean,
over.
Dean, that's Dean right there all day long.
And so
I made that play.
Yeah,
The original.
But that's the thing, right? That's the only that'd be the only concern with true head to head is that I think we would definitely have to have little tighter restrictions on the differentiation of plays in your playbook, so that someone just could call the same play 90% of the time, and it's not like you can go in and draw an adjustment on a play or something to defend it. But that's my only thought. So
yeah. All right, so I want to hit this last segment here before we go into the predicting next week's game. So, state of the league. We talked a little bit about this in pre-show. Going down the line, I say we'll start with Steve first, then Jerry, then Mitch, then Dean. This season alone, because you guys have been in here way longer than me, what is your opinion on how this season played out? A lot of new things has been coming up. Mitch is doing well with the with his newspaper. Me, and the three of us doing the podcasting show, and the interest in the league and the more participation from the coaches. What do you think the state of the league is right now? And I know that Charlie had mentioned about us putting in our names for next season, and I guess there's a waiting list. Would you want to see him expand the league? Not putting you on the spotlight, Charlie. I would like to see 2 more teams though. But anyway. So, starting with you, Jerry? How do you think this season played out overall as a whole for the league in general?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty competitive league, right? I think we still have a lot of newcomers. When I say newcomers, I'm talking still 3 or 4 seasons, right? Because I think this league, it takes a while to really, truly figure it out, right? Because it's so different than what people have played in before. But I think we're starting to see some of those new guys were picking up things, and so the league was really competitive. I mean, I think it was Dean earlier to discuss, that any given week, the PFML is starting to get more to that any given week. It's really competitive. And I think the interest with the extra teams, I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't know if a podcast and a newspaper would do anything, right? It's like, all right, if those guys want to have fun, cool. But I'm telling you, I think it's obvious. I think that helped gen up some interest there with that stuff on Facebook. It's obviously it's provided some extra exposure to the league, and that's generating interest in people emailing us and people trying to get copies of the software and get it loaded stuff. And I think it's a benefit because like Charlie and I and Rich, when we talk about some of this stuff, we look at, man, how long is this thing going to go on? And we've had some stretches where we look like we might be down to like 12 or 13 teams with some people talking into the season, and here we are. We're full up with the whole thing, and we got a couple people that are kind of interested to get in. And I'm shocked in 2023 that we are where we are. And I think some of that's owed to you guys for some of the work you're doing. So.
Well, thank you. Same to Mitch and Dean. Thanks a lot. Steve, what do you think?
I think PNFL's had a resurgence for sure. I think it's definitely due to the show, the news article that it sends out. I also think it's because of the YouTube sends. I think that's brought a lot of exposure. Those are being posted on Facebook, in the Facebook group all the time. It still has all the many coaches that played Football Pro are part of that group. So they see it happening. They see the buzz. They see the excitement. And I think also they're coming in and they're realizing that it's not as hard for them to actually play this game, because before you would have to, the old leagues, you'd have to come up with your own plays, right? You'd have to come up with your own plays within the game plan limits and the profile limits that were there, but you would have to come up with your own plays. You couldn't use there was no pool. So that the work is done there. You don't have to be like Dean and submit a play every week. But I mean, it's just basically it's all there. All you have to do is worry about your profile and your plan. I mean, each week it's not as hard to play. So I do expect this. I'm not shocked that we have a waiting list. I think if I had done this for the XFBFs, I'd send every week, put it on YouTube every week. Maybe that league would have lasted a little longer. I think that league also died because what was mentioned earlier about the ratings, that we had some kind of juggernaut supermen playing on the field, and it was just kind of hard we started seeing lopsided scores. We don't have that here. We have it seems very balanced. The ratings are balanced. I think we have a really good competitive sport here.
Yep. Dean, let's start with you. Go with you.
Yeah, I think the big theme I would say, and I've been talking about this on the show pretty much all season, is, the word parity. It's been very competitive. We on any given game, you can't assume that you're going to win. You could play a 4-12 team and they're tough. Like my game against Jacksonville was very close, and there are other games. Upsets happen. We've had more. I think I don't know exact numbers, but I just feel like we've had more upsets week in and week out this season than we have in any recent seasons that I can remember. So it's been very competitive. Some of the coaches are getting better. We do have new people. We have Neil in Denver, and I think he's going to improve once he gets more up to speed on how to run a team in this league. That NFC West division is potentially going to be very competitive, very tough next season. And on the NFC side, it's going to be more competitive. I don't think the Saints are going to slack off, and Green Bay this season has kind of played poorly some weeks and has played really strong some weeks. We kept on talking about which Green Bay team is going to show up this weekend when we predict the games on the show. They're going to be tough. Chicago is going to be tough, and Justin is going to have Sam Darnold back, and that's going to help. I mean, I can't imagine my team playing as well if and against Green Bay didn't if Justin Fields was not playing. And Detroit is going to improve. The rebuilding project that James is doing continues, and he'll have a better team this coming season than he did last season. So, the coming season is going to be just as competitive, if not more so, than the one that we just played.
I agree.
Plus, I think Mark's going to be better next season.
Oh, yes. Well, what got me was I started out doing well, and I think I had the 1 week when I was at the top, and then I just went on that 5-game losing streak, and it imploded from that point on. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Then I went into panic mode. Okay, what am I? I'm out of the playoffs, so I'm not even in the playoffs. So when I started pulling up stuff from last season when my play calling profiles from when I had a strong defense, and it was just like, okay, last season my defense was good, my offense was bad. This season, the offense seemed to be doing great, but the defense was bad. The running game is working, but the passing game is. I'm like, what? Yeah, that's in the past. We're just going to keep on moving. So I have some more work to do during the off season, so hopefully I will definitely rebound. We had some hope in the Emerald City, and then we just got snuffed out. So, oh well. There's always next season. So as we round this up, we're going to head into the championship games for this weekend, and we are going to start off. And actually, since we have the 4 of you here, each one of you has a lead pipe lock. So, you have LA and Oakland, Atlanta and Washington. You guys, the NFC coaches, is kind of a funny thing because you're picking who your opponent might be next week. So kind of an interesting thing to think about. So first game we're going to start off with is the Chargers going against the Raiders. They are giving the Raiders 6.5. We're going to start this one out with Jerry. Who do you think is going to win?
Yeah, I went back and took a look at their matchups earlier in the year, and I saw the first matchup where the Chargers had some advantages. They had some big plays early, got a lead. the Raiders came back, but they did play some good defense in the second half, and some of that defense continued in the second matchup. The second matchup was tight and ended up being a battle of field goal kickers, and so I think both teams are going to try to open it up a little bit this time, and I think that favors the Chargers. I think the Chargers not only going to cover, I think they're going to win the game outright.
Okay, Dean.
Is that a lead pipe lock in that pick?
That's his lead pipe lock right there.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I think this is going to be a very tough, close game. I think Steve is going to bring his best game plan and best game to this matchup. But on the other hand, Mitch has been to a conference championship in the past, I believe, when he was coaching Atlanta, and I think he knows this is an opportunity. And you don't get many of these opportunities, other than maybe the Jets and Cardinals have coached their way into a number of them. But I think I'm predicting this is going to be a Raiders win 28-20. And yes, this is a lead pipe lock. Now, that's not for any disrespect of the Chargers. I think the Chargers are going to be very tough. And I'm predicting a total of 48 points being scored in this game. But I think the edge will ultimately go to the Raiders, and the Raiders will be going to the Super Bowl to face whoever we manage to send in the NFC.
Okay. Now we're going to pivot this one over to the NFC side. We have Atlanta going up against Washington, and they are giving the Redskins 9.5 on this one. We're going to start this out with the AFC coach. We're going to start with you, Steve.
All right. As I see this one, well, I mean, these guys have been playing each other a long time. They've been in the same division before. They've had a long ongoing rivalry. They split the season games, so Atlanta won one and Washington won the other. This could, to me, people look at it and go on paper and go, "Oh, Washington's going to blow out the Falcons." They got that shutout last week against the Saints. I wouldn't be so sure. So, I mean, I think it's going to be a close game no matter what. I mean, I think that we might see a little bit more running out of Atlanta this time. Though I do think the running was a key factor in that game against Chicago for them, where they had those big runs that broke out. So it wasn't just all pass. So I really see the Redskins defense. Well, should I call them that? We'll call them that. Their defense is going to be there. It's going to be solid. Atlanta cannot turn the ball over. They have to be very, very good about protecting the quarterback, especially considering the Saints were sacked 7 times. That pass rush is going to be there. So I would say that from what I'm seeing from just looking at the stats and everything, I do think, unfortunately, sorry, Dean, the Redskins do have an edge. They have more experience. They've gotten to this game before. I think they're trying to get back there to get another championship. And this is your first gig. So I'm going to say lead pipe lock is going to be the Redskins for me.
All right. Mitch, let you round this one off. What's your take?
Well, the first thing, we have to do is check the forecast, for Washington, because we know that dictates.
That's what I'm saying.
Dictates everything that Jerry does. That's number one. Number two is, look at this. I think everything Steve said was right on. Was right on point. The big part is that with that season split this year between the two teams, Washington did win their game at Washington against Atlanta. And in both games, I mean, combined between the two games, Atlanta was only able to average about 10, 11 points. I think they'll score at least 17 this week. I think they figured out some things on offense since that time. As long as they can protect the quarterback, if they have another Green Bay situation, then throw everything out the door, as I'm saying. But I think it's going to be a Washington victory at home, but I believe it's going to be less than that 9.5 spread. I think it's going to be I think it's going to probably be under 7 points, but I think Washington wins, and they'll go on to the Super Bowl.
Okay. So as we wrap this one up, I want to say congratulations to the Final Four. Good luck this weekend, and all of you guys have had a great season. So as we close this out, any final words? We're going to run down the line. We're going to start with Steve. Any final words you got?
I just want to say congrats to the new coaches that made the playoffs, and just buckle up and get back there again.
All right, Jerry.
Yeah, I'm thinking, just make a little remark over here to Dean. The weather forecast looks like it's supposed to be clear, so I think that bodes well. We'll see, right? But see how that weather turns out. Otherwise, so yeah, I'm looking forward to a good game this weekend. I think Atlanta's improved on some things, and they definitely showed that last week. So it should be a pretty good game. But, from my viewpoint, what we do is we do what we do well, and we bring that every week and force somebody else to beat us doing what we do well. That's the strategy. So we'll see.
All right, Dean.
I would say I'm just as well in favor as quality weather as anyone. So clear weather is good. And I'll also echo what I said last week. We will have to hope that our quarterbacks stay healthy.
All right, Coach Mitch. Any final words, and then you can take us home.
Yeah, well, as I've said before, I'm just privileged and humbled to be able to take the field against the Chargers this week.
Oh, my God.
And, know it'll be a good game, and, just hope we all just come out healthy at the end of it. And with that, I say let's get it.